Hello everyone and welcome back. I'm so excited for today because we are going to be building simple dictionary app. As you can see, this is the final project, and if I search for, like, say happy and I hit enter, I have the skeleton loading here, and then I have the meaning and definition. We have the example, synonym and anonym here. And the technology what we are going to use React and Tailwind for the UI. And we are going to use this api.dictionary, api.dev to get the result here. And yeah, that's all gonna be it. And so excited for today. So let's get started, everyone. So in here, I've already created React app with npx, and I remove a couple files. So I just have index and app here and the index.css. So what we need to do first is we need to install the Tailwind. So let's go to Tailwind documentation here and click the framework guides, click the create React app, and you can just following this step here. So let's just copy this and back here, and I'm gonna paste that in here and hit enter. Alright, so now it's done. If you get error in your app here, what you need to do is restart the server. Now we can go back to Tailwind here and just copy this content, and we need to edit the tailwind.config.js file just right here, and we need to change this content into this thing here. Just save and just copy this Tailwind based component and utilities into the CSS, which is the index.css here. We need to copy and paste up here. Okay, now save, and we good to go right now. We can use the Tailwind class in our app. So what we need to do here in h1, I'm going to say class name set it equals to, let's say text. I'm going to change that to xl3xl, and I'm going to say text center. Let's say text center, and text bold. Say text bold, font bold. I think let's say font bold and underline. Okay, if I save and let's take a look, here we go. Now the Tailwind CSS is successfully installed in our app. Pretty cool. So let's close this terminal here, make it smaller, and inside these components I'm going to create file. Let's say header.js file, and in here let's generate rfce, which is functional path component. I'm going to remove the React up here, and then what we need to do is let's just return like so, and let's put the header not right there but inside the div. Let's put the header. Now we need to just bringing the header in here. Let's say header like so. Now save and let's take a look. Here we have header. Pretty cool. So now let's work with header. So here I'm going to add the class name set that equals to. Let's change the background to gray 700, and inside this div here I'm going to create another div, and let's put a container here, and I'm gonna say mx, which is margin horizontally to auto to make it the container in the center, and I'm going to put the padding vertically into 8, which is to RAM. So inside in here I'm gonna create h1, and let's say simple dictionary, and down here I'm gonna say paragraph text, and let's say find definitions for word. All right, so if I save and let's take a look here, this is what we have. So now let's go back here and let's styling this h1. So in this h1 I'm going to say class name set that equals to the text. I'm going to make it better to, let's say 3xl. It's going to be text like so, and also I'm going to change the font to bold. I'm going to make it center, so text center, and I'm going to change the color to white, so I'm going to say text white. Okay, if I save, this is what we have. All right, cool. So now let's styling this paragraph text. Let's go into paragraph tag, and let's say class name set that equals to, let's say text center to make it in center, and also I'm going to say margin top to 1, which is 0.25 RAM, and margin bottom say 10, and also I want to say text Slab, let's give 300. Okay, just the text color, and then the text, I'm gonna say text large. All right, so now save, and here we go. Pretty cool. So down here we need to create the input field. So now let's go back here. Still inside this container, we need to create another div with the class name called flex. And also let's change the item to center. Let's say item center and justify center. And also I'm gonna add the margin top to 5. Okay, so inside this flex here, I'm gonna add another flex, and let's add the, let's say, border 2. And also I'm gonna say border gray, which is the color, into, let's say, 200. And I'm gonna do rounded, because as you can see in the final project here, we have the border here, okay, around the input field and this button. We have the border 2 here. So now let's go back here, and inside this div, I'm gonna give a input and also the button. Okay, this input basically have a placeholder called search. Let's say search ... and also down here we have the button, and the button have a text called search. Okay, if I save and let's take a look, this is what we have. All right, cool. So now let's styling this a little bit. Let's go back here in the input. I'm going to add the class name set that equals to, let's say, px, which is padding horizontally to 4 and padding vertically into 2. And also for the medium size of the browser, I want to say the width into 80. And let's save and let's take a look. This is what we have. I think the padding is not work. Yeah, let's add this right there, and here we go. So now let's styling this button. We need to add the class name set that equals to, I'm going to change the background to background blue, and let's say 400. And also I'm going to give a border 1, not border 1, border owl. And also I'm going to add the px to 4, and also padding y into, let's say, 2, same like we put in the input field here. Alright, so now save and let's take a look. Pretty cool here. And the text, we need to change that to white. Let's say text white. So now if I save, and here we go, so clean. So now down here, just inside the flags here, still inside the flags, we need to create the text here, which is the result for. And down here we need to put h3, and let's say results for. And inside in here I'm going to put span tag, and this is the result. Basically this come from the state you don't have yet, but we're gonna put it right now. So let's say for example I'm gonna put happy, and in h3 here I'm going to add the class name so that equals to, I'm gonna change the color to text gray, let's say 50, and also I want to change the position to center, and also margin top to 4. And for the span here, I'm going to give a class name so that equals to, let's say, text to white, and also the font, I'm going to change that to bold. So now if I save and let's take a look, this is what we have. Alright, so pretty cool. Alright, so I think we're done with this header styling, and next what we need to work is we need to handle the state value here. So let's go to app here, and I'm going to create state. Let's say cons, and I'm gonna give a name value and set value so that equals to use state. By default it's gonna be empty string, and in input here I'm going to add a on change event. So let's say on change, that goes to, let's say, handle input change, and we are going to create this function here. I'm going to create up here, let's say cons handle input change, so that goes to grab the event, and then here I'm going to set the value into e.target.value. Alright, so now what we need to do is go to button here, and I'm going to add on click here. Let's say on click, set that equals to, let's give a function name handle submit. All right, so I'm gonna create the function up here. So let's say const handle submit, set it equals to, it's gonna be arrow function, and in here I'm going to set the value back to empty string. So next I'm going to create state that will be available to entire our app, because down here I'm going to create another app which is, let's say, a result or something, and I need to, the state will be available in the header and the another component inside this app here. Okay, I'm going to create a context API to create the global state. So let's do in here, I'm going to say create context, and I'm going to do export const, and let's give a name input context, set that equals to, let's say, create context, gonna become from React, and then we invoke the function like so, and in here we are gonna create a state. So let's say const, I'm gonna give a name input value, say input value, and set input value, set that equals to use state. By default, let's say empty string. So in here I'm going to create variable called value, set that equals to, it's going to be object, and input value I'm going to set that into input value. I'm going to set that into input value, but if we have same name we don't need this, we just can say input value, and also I'm going to send the set input value. So in here we need to wrap our app with input context. So we can say input context like so, and we need to wrap entire div here inside the input context like so. So in here we need to give a value, set that equals to value, come from this variable here. All right, so now let's go back to header. We are going to grab this value. The first thing is going to be, let's say, hello world. Okay, so now we are go back to header.js here. So in here I'm going to grab the input value, and the set input value is going to be come from, we are going to use context here, use context, and we are going to paste the input context inside in here. Okay, the input context is going to become from the app, this one here. Okay, and we can grab the input value and the set input value. So now if I console log the input value, it's gonna be hello world. So now let's take a look here. I'm gonna refresh. Something wrong, it's blank here. In the console, render is not a function. Alright, so let's go back to our app.js here, and in here we need to say provider. So input context dot provider. Let's say provider, and this down here as well. So let's say provider like so. Let's remove this. Here we go. Now save, and let's take a look. Everything is clean. Now we have hello world in the console here. Okay, that's mean we successfully grab the input value from the app here with context API. So we don't need to paste the input value, so that goes to input value, and we grab the input value from this header with the state here. Okay, we don't need that. All right, so pretty cool. So now what we need to do is, let's remove this console. In handle submit here, remember handle submit will be fire when we click this button. Okay, so in here what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say set input value to value. Okay, and let's try here. I'm going to console log this input value, and I'm gonna remove this hello world. Now everything with typing in here will be showing into the console. So let's say example. If I click search, now we have example. It's come from the app. Okay, pretty cool. The value here is going to be updated. Pretty cool. So now let's go back to header, and what else I want to do is I need to, when I click enter in keyboard, it's gonna be fire. It's like we did it in this button here. Okay, So we can go to input here, and let's say here on k down set that equals to, I'm gonna say handle input k down, right? So now let's create this function here. I'm gonna use lowercase in here, so let's just copy and create in here. Let's say const handle input k down set that equals to arrow function. So in here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the event, and then in here I'm gonna check if the event is equal to enter, which is e.key is equal to enter. Okay, we click the enter. I want to set the input value to value, okay, and also the set value back to empty string. So now if I save and let's refresh this, it's empty right here. And if I typing example and I click enter, now we have the example down here. Pretty cool. So now what we are going to do is I want to showing the input value down here. So here we need to cut that out, and I'm going to add condition here. If the input value have a value, we need to render this #3 here, okay? And also this span here is gonna be input value. Let's say input value. So now save and let's take a look here. I'm gonna refresh. Let's search for happy. If I click enter, we have happy here. Let's do example. If I click, we have example, but as you can see, the value is not back to empty string. There's something wrong here. So let's go back to input, and in here I'm going to say value set that equals to value. Okay, so now save and let's try that again, word, and I hit enter. We have word here and the input value is empty. Pretty cool. So next, let's create the result list component here. I'm going to create file inside the components. Let's say ResultList.js file, and in here rfce, hit enter, and I'm going to say result. Okay, let's remove the import React up here, and I'm going to import the result. Let's say result list down here. Just make sure you import up here. Okay, if I save, we should see the result here. Pretty cool. So now let's work with the result list component. So let's cut this div here, and I'm going to return div down here, and let's give a class name set that equals to, I'm going to put everything inside a container, and then I'm going to make mx auto to make it in center and padding to 4, and also I'm going to set the maximal width into to XL, okay, which is 42 rem. So inside in here I'm going to create a div again, and inside this div I'm going to create #3. Okay, so in here I'm going to say meaning and let's say definition. All right, so down here let's create another #3. It's gonna be the example, and let's do that again. #3 synonym, and down here is gonna be the antonym. All right, and we are going to styling this #3, this all #3 here, and I'm going to add the class name set it equals to. Let's change the text to XL, and I'm going to make the font to bold, and I'm going to add the margin top to 4. Okay, so let's save and let's take a look what we have. All right, this is what we have. Pretty cool. Let's go back here. So next we are going to fetch the data from the API, but before that we are going to create the state first. So I'm going to give a name response and set response. Set that equals to is going to be a capital R, and it's going to be equals to use state. By default it's going to be, let's say, null. And also I have error here, so let's say error and set error equals to use state. By default it's going to be empty string. and I have the loading. So let's say loading and set loading so that goes to use state. By default is going to be false. So down here I'm going to create function. I want to give a name fetch data, I think. So that goes to is going to be a row function, and basically it's going to be async await function. Let's say async function, and in here I want to say try and catch. All right, so in try here I'm going to say set loading here into true. Okay, and also I'm going to say const res set that equals to, I'm going to await. Yeah, I'm going to use axios basically in here. So let's open a terminal here, and I'm going to say yarn at axios. Of course you can use fetch, but I like to use axios by the way. Alright, so it's done. Let's close the terminal here, make it small again. And in here, what I'm going to do is say axios. Just make sure you import up here, axios, and I'm going to put the slash and params here. Okay, but we need to set the base URL first. So in here, I'm going to say axios dot, let's say default dot base URL, so that equals to, you're going to grab the link here. I'm going to copy this and paste that in here like so, but we are going to remove this happy like that. And now in here what we need to do is say slash param. Okay, this param here will be adding in this string here, which is slash whatever the params. So the variable params here is going to be come from input value that we're typing in this input field here. All right, so now let's put params here, and let's remove this forward slash. And after we get the data here, we need to set the response into response.data. The data come from this get request here. Okay, and then in here I'm going to set the error into null. All right, and inside this catch, if something wrong happened, we need to grab the error first here. So let's say error, and then here I'm gonna say set error, and we put the error here. Okay, we give this error value if something wrong, and then here we have finally, and we need to set the loading back to false. Okay, after the try this done, we need to set the set loading back to false. As you can see, this function is not fire. As you can see here, it's declared but never used. So here we need to run this function in useEffect. Okay, so let's do here. useEffect is come from React, and it's gonna be a row function here, and I need this function will be fire every time I change this value and I click at this button here. Okay, so in here we need to grab the input value come from this context here. Okay, so let's remove this first, and in here what we need to do is just like we did it in this header here. So we can just copy this, not cut but copy, and paste that in here like so. So now we need to import the use context and input context. So basically we don't need this set input value, we just need the input value. So if the input value change, we need to run this fetch data. So we need to add the input value as a dependency of this useEffect, and in here we need to check first if the input value have a value, let's say input value dot length, and we need to run this fetch data function. So we can put in here, and we can put the input value as a property in this function, and we grab in here, right? So let's say param, and we use the value in here. All right, so now when I console.log the response, we should see something data in the console, right? So as you can see, it's null right now, but if I typing happy, let's say happy, We click enter, we still get a null. So what happened here? Nothing wrong in here. Let's go back. Yeah, as you can see here, we get the data. Okay, and as you can see here, we have the word happy, the meanings here, we get the definition, as you can see here. So basically we get the definition, example, and etc. We have the synonym as well here. Alright, so now we need to showing this data into this app here. So the first thing is, if the loading is true, I want to handle that in here. So if loading is true, I want to return, what is that? I'm going to return h1, and let's say loading first for now. And if something wrong, which is if the error have a value, which is something wrong happened, we need to return h3 here, no definitions found. Okay, and I'm going to add emoji here. Let's say set this thing here. All right, cool. And I'm going to add class name as well in here. Let's say class name set equals to, I'm going to make it into the center, and I'm going to add the margin top to 10. Let's add the font to semi bold, and also I'm going to change the color to text gray. Let's say 500. All right, so save, and let's give a value in this error so we can see. Save, and let's take a look here in the browser, refresh. As you can see, this is what we want. Pretty cool. So let's go back and remove this value here. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to render this div depend on the response. So I'm gonna cut that. So let's say response, I'm gonna say n, let's say this div here. Alright, so now save, and the first time we don't see the result because we don't have the response, right? So if I typing something here, so let's say response, if I click enter, we get the loading here, as you can see, and then we get this content here. So next I'm going to create another file inside a components folder. I'm gonna give a name, MeningList.js file. Alright, so in here I'm going to generate functional pass component, and why is using MeningList like so. So now I'm going to remove the import React, and here I'm going to let's return div with some text in here, MeningList. Alright, typo, but I don't care. Let's go back to result list, and I'm going to render the meaning list in here. So now save, cannot find file meaning list. It's gonna be like so. If I typing random something here, click enter, we get loading, and then we get the meaning list here. Alright, meaning list is rendered, it's meaning everything is work. In MeningList component here, I'm going to send the min. The min is gonna be the response. Okay, just the data come from API. So in MeningList, we need to grab the min. Let's say min, and first I'm going to console log the min so you can see. Let's say min and save, and let's take a look in the browser. I'm gonna refresh, and let's search for happy, hit enter. And we should see here the data. Okay, we are going to showing this meaning and definition come from this definition here. Okay, so here we need to remove the meaning list, and inside in here we need to map through the min.map, and we are going to grab the value, and in here we are going to return value.meanings, which is this thing here. This is array, so we need to map through that again. So let's say .map, and we grab the means, and in here I'm going to return the means dot definition. Okay, so let's go back. We need to say means dot definitions. Okay, and as you can see here inside the definition we have the array again. So in here what I'm gonna do, I want to say .map, and I grab the individual definition, and I'm going to return div here. All right, it's look complicated, but anyway, you can just console log to see the value of each value here. Okay, so in here I'm going to say ally, and inside this ally I'm going to render the definition dot this thing here, def.definition basically. So def.definition. All right, definition. Yeah, cool. So now if I save this, we should see the data. Pretty cool. And I'm gonna add the HR under the li here. Let's say HR, and here we go. We add the underline. So let's also add the key here. Key so that it goes to. I'm going to put the def.definition. So let's put it in here. So now save and let's take a look. We should see this data here. All right, cool. So next I'm going to create another component, which is example. So let's say example.js file, and in here I'm going to just copy the MeningList. Okay, I'm going to copy and put it here and change this MeningList into example. Okay, so I'm going to remove the console log here like so. So in example, what we need to showing is like this one here. So definition, inside the definitions array, we have example. Okay, let's go back. So in here, I'm going to change the definition to example. So now we can just import this example into ResultList. So in here, I can just say example, and I send the mean that equals to the response. Okay, so now save and let's take a look in the browser. We get loading and then we get an example here. And by the way, in example, we don't need the HR. All right, so pretty cool. So now let's create the synonym component. So I'm gonna create that in here. Let's say synonym.js file. So in here, again, we can just copy this example and put that in here. So we can grab the synonym in here, as you can see here. So now let's go back here. So this is gonna be synonym. All right, and the name of the component here is gonna be synonym as well. But as you can see, the synonym here, this is array, so we cannot render the array like this. Okay, so here I'm gonna remove that, and I'm going to return, let's say return, I'm gonna grab the definition dot synonym, and I'm going to map through. Okay, but first I'm gonna check if there's have synonym. I'm going to map through the synonym here, and here I'm going to say li and just render the synonym like so. Okay, so now save and let's take a look here. We have the synonym here, but it's not rendered. That's because we don't yet import the synonym in ResultList. In here, I'm gonna say synonym, hit enter, and we need to send the mean set that equals to response. Now save and let's take a look here. We get a loading and the synonym is still empty here. So what a problem. Yeah, that's because this is the synonyms. Okay, so we need to add as in here. Let's say synonyms and save and let's take a look. We get all the data here. Pretty cool. So in here, I'm going to add two columns basically. So what we need to do is in div here, I want to add class name. Let's say columns2, and in medium, I'm going to say column 2, 3. Okay, so now save and let's take a look. We should see 3 column, but in small device, it's gonna be 2 column. All right, so cool. Next, we are going to create the antonym. So let's go back and create the antonym file here. Let's say antonym.js file. So in here, we can just copy the synonym here and put it here, and we need to change the component name to antonym and down here as well. And also we need to change this into antonyms, and this is going to be antonym, and it's going to be ant. Okay, so if I save, and we should see the antonym, but in this case we don't get the result. That's because we don't yet import in result list. I forget that. So in here, let's say antonym, and also we need to send the min. Let's say min set that equals to response. Okay, so now save, and let's take a look again in our app. As you can see, we have the antonym. But another problem is, as you can see in example, we have empty value here. So let's go back to example. We need to add condition here. So in here, I'm going to say if definition dot example have a value, I want to render this li. Okay, this li here, or else I just want to render empty string. So now save, and let's take a look. Now there's con, right? Cool, pretty cool. So the next thing that I'm gonna show you is how to create the I think the loading. Okay, if I say song here, hit enter, the loading it's not really cool. So let's go back in result list, and in loading here, let's remove this h1, and in here let's give a div, and I'm gonna add class name set that equals to flex, and it's gonna be flex column, and then I'm gonna add the space vertically into 3. Okay, and also I'm gonna add the animate to pulse right here, and I'm going to add the padding to 4, and let's put container here, make it center to mx auto, and also I'm going to add the maximal width into 2xl. Okay, and inside this div here, I have another div again, and in here I'm going to add the class name set that equals to, I'm going to add the height to 6, and background to gray, let's say gray 300, and margin top to 5, and also I'm gonna set the rounded to medium. Okay, I'm gonna copy this couple times and change the height this into, let's say 40, and also I'm going to change this height to, let's say 8, and this thing here to 40 again. Alright, so now let's save, and let's take a look what we have. Let's searching for example. If I hit enter, as you can see right there, we have the skeleton loading, and that's pretty cool. If I search for happy, as you can see, pretty cool. Yeah, I think we're done, guys, with this simple project. Hope you learned something new, and yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm gonna see you in the very next video. Thank you so much, and see ya.